Chapter 21. Saint Ka Di Yun. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Seeing how close he was to hitting his target, Ka Di Liang felt a tiny amount of regret. However, he immediately went back into motion, and flung a kick at Jian Chen. In a flash, 10 moves had passed without Jian Chen retaliating, and every single move from Ka Di Liang had been easily dodged. But to everyone else that was watching, Jian Chen had been narrowly dodging each move by the skin of his teeth, causing everyone watching, including Chang Yanghu, to break out in cold sweat as they watched in anxiety. Ka Di Liang's attacks were fairly fast and furious, but none of the 10 moves he had lashed out with even touched Jian Chen's clothes. Having not landed a single blow, Ka Di Liang was angry beyond belief. Finally lifting a fist to block Ka Di Liang's fist, Jian Chen spoke, 10 moves have passed, it's my turn. Without waiting for a response, he aimed a kick at Ka Di Liang. The speed in which his leg was moving was extremely fast, there wasn't even enough time for Ka Di Liang to dodge. By the time he tried to move his hand up to block, Jian Chen's leg had already smashed against Ka Di Liang's chest. Dang! 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 The force of Jian Chen's leg caused Ka Di Liang to stumble backwards. As he steadied himself, Ka Di Liang gave Jian Chen a dumbstruck look. Although Jian Chen was only at the 8th Saint Force layer, Jian Chen's strength had far surpassed his expectations. It wasn't something Ka Di Liang would be able to endure. In the last fight during the competition, Ka Di Liang had never exchanged blows with Jian Chen, so he never understood the true extent of Jian Chen's strength. It was not until this fight that Ka Di Liang realized that Jian Chen was stronger than he looked. In fact, based on the strength of the kick just now, Ka Di Liang was starting to doubt that Jian Chen was only at the 8th Saint Force layer. Perhaps Jian Chen also wanted to end this battle quickly, because he didn't give Ka Di Liang time to even gasp before he quickly slammed his fist into Ka Di Liang's nose. Ka Di Liang's face hardened as he stood back up, his entire body tried to stand against Jian Chen's fist before he tried to smash his fist against Jian Chen's head. Jian Chen let out a cold laugh before blocking the fist with his own hand. Grabbing onto Ka Di Liang's shoulder with his other hand, he got into a horse stance, and grabbed onto him with his right arm. Grabbing tightly, he exerted some force and sent Ka Di Liang flying away. In his previous life, Jian Chen had learned wrestling techniques from the Mongols, so he was fairly proficient at it. He had used it many times, and gained experience in it so much, that it was ingrained into his memory. Jian Chen learned many different skills other than just swordplay, and was fairly proficient at every single thing he put his mind towards. Ka Di Liang's body was almost like a feather as he flew through the air, thanks to Jian Chen. He flew 4.5 meters into the air before finally falling back down to the arena. Phew! He saw Jian Chen to be weak, but somehow, Jian Chen had managed to accomplish such a feat with his delicate-looking figure. Likewise, the audience around the arena let out gasps of shock as they started to reevaluate their opinions about Jian Chen. Seeing the two fight it out like this made it so that no one would ever dare to underestimate Jian Chen in the future. The faces of Ka Di Yun and Ka Di Chioli both gradually turned quite ugly. The situation was far beyond what they had expected it to be. Hein! Changyang Xian Tian, you actually are a slightly skilled, Ka Di Yun said in a low voice, while angrily gritting his teeth. Ka Di Liang stood back up pathetically on the ring with a cloudy-looking face. He looked at Jian Chen's eyes with a gaze filled with poison. Ah! Ka Di Liang roared, focusing all his power of the 9th level of Saint Force in the center of his two palms. He quickly rushed towards Jian Chen with both his arms pressing towards Jian Chen's chest, and attacked. Jian Chen sneered, and as he condensed all his Saint Force onto his palms as well, he suddenly threw his own hands towards Ka Di Liang's, resulting in a collision between both pairs of hands. Pang! As the sound came echoing out, Jian Chen and Ka Di Liang were stuck in a deadlock. Their fists had slammed so hard against each other, a mini shockwave pushed both of them backwards. Jian Chen didn't stop there, his legs began to blur as he skillfully maneuvered to counter the shock. Looking at the rapidly retreating Ka Di Liang, Jian Chen immediately dashed forward and leapt up from the ground, both of his legs kicking out at Ka Di Liang. Before Ka Di Liang could regain his footing, he was unable to block the attack. As he was kicked in the stomach by Jian Chen, Ka Di Liang was sent flying once more. PFF, hitting the ground, Ka Di Liang's face went white from the pain as he began to spit out some blood. He had started to take in heavy amounts of damage. Younger brother. Older brother. Ka Di Yun and Ka Di Chioli ran up to Ka Di Liang's side on the ground. Picking him up, they grimaced and looked at him with concern as they saw the small trickle of blood from the corner of Ka Di Liang's mouth. Younger brother, are you okay? Ka Di Yun asked. His face was relatively unsightly to look at, although the situation was different from last time, since Ka Di Liang had been careless during the first match with Jian Chen. However, this second time was different. This time Ka Di Liang was fighting with Jian Chen using all of his strength, which was stronger than 80% of the other 9th Saint Force Layer students. Older brother, how are you feeling? Are you seriously hurt? Ka Di Chioli asked with a voice full of concern. Ka Di Liang was helped to his feet by his two siblings. Lightly shaking his head, he said, eldest brother, third sister, I'll be fine. I've only suffered from minor injuries. But even as he said that, his two siblings could detect a small tinge of weakness in his voice. Looking at Ka Di Liang's pale face, Ka Di Yun grew angry. Raising his head to look at the elevated Jian Chen, he growled, third sister, you take care of second brother. I'll go teach that arrogant brat a lesson. Leaving his siblings, he walked up into the arena to confront him. Eldest brother, you shouldn't. Eldest brother, you can't. Ka Di Liang and Ka Di Chioli tried to block his path, but unfortunately, they didn't reach him in time. The two siblings let out a sigh. No matter if Ka Di Yun won or lost now, the Ka Di clan would lose some prestige within the academy. This was originally a fair battle, so if they had lost, then they wouldn't have felt any negative side effects other than losing some face. But now that Ka Di Yun was going to fight, the whole situation was different. If news about a freshman immediately being bullied by some senior straight after entering the academy was spread throughout the entire academy, then the three siblings would be mocked and ridiculed by the whole academy. Jian Chen stared at Ka Di Yun as he leapt up onto the stage and sneered, are you here to avenge your brother? Angrily glaring at Jian Chen, he said, Changyang Xiang Tian, you really are strong. However, you've injured my brother, therefore, I won't let you leave this place unharmed. The people around the stage all creased their foreheads as they listened to him. Their opinions about Ka Di Yun had now changed. Ka Di Yun, what is the meaning of this? Do you plan to bully the Changyang clan until no one remains? A deep voice called out as another person walked onto the arena. Turning around, Jian Chen felt relieved to see it was his older brother, Changyang Hu. Changyang Hu stared at Ka Di Yun intensely, Ka Di Yun, if you want to fight, then you'll have to fight me first. Jian Chen felt a wave of warmth encompass his body as he listened to his brother back him up. Big brother, you should head back down, I can handle this myself. Changyang Hu shook his head in response to him. No can do, fourth brother, it should be you that should head down. Ka Di Yun's strength has long since reached the peak of the Saint Force level. You are no match for him, so let your big brother help you. After hesitating a bit from these words, Jian Chen nodded, then big brother, please be careful. Saying this, Jian Chen walked off the arena. Ka Di Yun sneered in disdain as he watched Jian Chen exit the arena, Changyang Hu, you're just asking for trouble, so don't blame me for anything that happens. Humph, you're saying this far too early. Whoever the winner is and whoever the loser is isn't certain yet. Changyang Hu replied. He and Ka Di Yun had long since reached the peak of the 10th Saint Force layer, so if Ka Di Yun didn't condense his Saint Force into a Saint weapon, then their strengths would be equal. Ka Di Yun let loose a ridiculing expression as he looked at the disdain on Changyang Hu's face. Lifting his right arm, a large golden-colored stream of energy started to focus onto his right arm and condensed into a great golden sword. The golden sword was quite large, and measured around 5 feet long and a single palm spread wide. Judging from the length of the handle, the sword was meant to be held with both hands. Bedo Dum looking at Ka Di Yun grabbed the sword with both hands. Jian Chen's eyebrows furrowed together in concern. He had read up on saint weapons back in the Changyang mansion. He could easily see that this was Ka Di Yun's saint weapon, and that this was also the first saint weapon that Jian Chen had ever seen since he first arrived in this new world. He had long since understood that a saint weapon was the condensed version of one saint force, but seeing this with his own eyes, Jian Chen couldn't help but feel amazed. To think that the saint force could be condensed in such a way, it felt almost like a fantasy. This made Jian Chen feel extremely excited. The moment the golden two-hand sword appeared, everyone cried out in surprise and admiration. A saint weapon, he really did condense one. So he already broke through into the saint level. Ka Di Yun became a saint. Changyang Hu will be in trouble now. The distance between the peak of the 10th layer to sainthood wasn't that far, but it was nonetheless very difficult to cross over. Within the Kargath Academy, the majority of the seniors had all reached the peak of the 10th saint force layer, but were unable to condense their saint force into saint weapons. If one didn't have the talent that surpassed a regular person's, then it would be extremely difficult for him, her to make a breakthrough. Within the Tianyuan continent, it was not rare to see many practitioners to be stuck at the 10th layer until the end of their lives, without being able to become a saint. From this one could see that successfully becoming a saint was a truly difficult achievement. Also, once one broke through to becoming a saint, her strength would be increased by a large amount. A saint weapon wasn't one's only weapon, one could use her emotions to directly fuel her abilities in order to use attacks that far surpassed one's original strength. Looking at Ka Di Yun's golden sword, Changyang Hu's face became extremely unsightly. Now that Ka Di Yun possessed a saint weapon, his strength could overturn the heavens. A person at the peak of the 10th saint force layer definitely wouldn't be a match for him. Big Brother really did condense a saint weapon. Below the arena, Ka Di Chioli was pleasantly surprised, as she watched Ka Di Yun wave his saint weapon around. Ka Di Liang had an envious look on his face as he stared at the saint weapon, but he too was pleasantly surprised. Both siblings had not realized that their eldest sibling had reached the saint level until this moment. Holding the saint weapon, Ka Di Yun's confidence in himself was boosted to unprecedented levels. As Changyang Hu's face grew darker and darker, Ka Di Yun's face became even haughtier. The pleasure Ka Di Yun felt in his heart was indescribable. Ha ha ha, Changyang Hu, are you afraid now? If you kneel down and kowtow to the ground 3 times and call me your elder, then I'll spare you. If you don't, then you'll know what the end result will be. Ka Di Yun laughed crazily, his tone savage. Changyang Hu's face ashened as he listened to Ka Di Yun's demands. Snarling, he answered, "Dream on, Ka Di Yun. Even if you're a saint now, I, Changyang Hu, will never be afraid of you." Ka Di Yun looked at Changyang Hu arrogantly, and casually said, "Changyang Hu, what will you use to fight me with then?" Changyang Hu angrily glared at Ka Di Yun, fury blazing in his eyes. "Changyang Hu, your sword." At that moment, a sword came flying out from the audience below the arena. Changyang Hu grabbed the iron sword while settling into a stance. The sword was not light at all, and was of a fairly long size. The silver-white sword sparkled in the light in all 4 directions, and aside from the color, there were few differences between Ka Di Yun's sword and Changyang Hu's sword. Chapter 22. Battling Ka Di Yun. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. With his sword in hand, Changyang Hu's courage was bolstered, despite knowing that his opponent was a saint with a saint weapon. However, at least he had gained some more power too. "Changyang Hu, do you really think you stand a chance against me with a regular iron sword?" Wishful thinking. Right now, I'll show you the power of a saint. Ka Diyun quickly sped towards Changyang Hu after that while carrying his double sword, as if it wasn't heavy at all. He swung his sword at Changyang Hu so fast, the air whistled as the sword traveled through the air. Changyang Hu's attention was extremely concentrated on the Ka Diyun saint weapon. Quickly retreating before he could get hit, the sword narrowly missed him and only swiped at his clothes. A few strands of his clothes were sent flying through the air as the sword sliced away at the clothes. After becoming a saint, Ka Diyun's strength became many times stronger than what it was previously, and couldn't be compared to Changyang Hu's strength, which was at the 10th saint force layer. With just the first blow, Changyang Hu knew how much danger he was in. Ha! Halfway through another strike, Ka Diyun didn't hesitate at all mid-swing. As he advanced closer and closer to Changyang Hu, his entire body started to emit an extremely strong qi that imposed itself on Changyang Hu. Taking a swipe, Ka Diyun tried to chop down Changyang Hu with his golden sword once more. Seeing how strong the great sword was, Changyang Hu could not parry the blow, as the iron sword in his hand would not be able to withstand the powerful force from the saint weapon. The great sword was extremely fast, and was far beyond what Changyang Hu had expected. Feeling the great sword in close proximity with his head, Changyang Hu didn't hesitate at all to duck and roll away from it. At this moment, he was unable to cope with the fight's intensity. Bang! The moment after Changyang Hu rolled away, Ka Diyun's sword embedded itself into the spot where Changyang Hu had once been standing at. The strong concentration of energy that made up the sword left a deep crack within the ground of the arena, while smaller cracks started to spread out in all four directions to at least a meter away from the original impact zone. Changyang Hu took the opportunity when Ka Diyun was trying to recover from his strike to brandish and slash his sword at Ka Diyun. Humph! Ka Diyun snorted in disdain as he waved his hands. The saint weapon in his hands began to emit a magnificent light as it reappeared back into his hands and collided against Changyang Hu's iron sword. A loud and crisp sound echoed throughout the arena as the iron sword met the golden sword, before it was sent flying backwards. The sword had been forced out of Changyang Hu's hands after the collision, causing Changyang Hu to be defenseless. Already his mouth was trickling blood as the sword had somehow managed to inflict damage to him. Immediately, Ka Diyun's foot lashed out and smashed against Changyang Hu's chest. His strength was high enough that it was able to send a strong person like Changyang Hu flying backwards and off of the arena. As he flew off into the air, blood came spraying out of his mouth as his face grew pale from the shock. "Big brother!" Jian Chen cried out, his expression suddenly changing. He immediately dashed towards where Changyang Hu was and leapt into the air. While everyone was watching Changyang Hu being launched into the air in astonished stupors, Jian Chen had already moved into action. Right as Changyang Hu was about to hit the ground, Jian Chen came out from the side and caught him before impact. Keh. On the ground, Changyang Hu started to cough violently, causing droplets of blood to splatter out of his mouth. A saint's strength was far stronger than someone who didn't reach the same level. This was true even for Changyang Hu, who was at the peak of the 10th layer. Thus, he had suffered from serious internal injuries. "Big brother, are your injuries serious?" Jian Chen tried to quell the anger within himself as he looked at his brother in concern. Changyang Hu shook his head in anger as he fixed his attention at the smug Ka Diyun on the arena. "I'll be fine, but I didn't think Ka Diyun's strength would be this strong after reaching the saint level with a saint weapon. As of right now, your big brother is no longer a match for him." Changyang Hu growled, his anger not dissipating at all. "I'm sorry big brother, I was the one who got you involved." Looking at Changyang Hu's pale white face from his injuries, Jian Chen felt true guilt within his heart. Hearing these words, Changyang Hu turned around and looked at Jian Chen. He furrowed his brows and angrily replied, "Fourth brother, what in the world are you saying? Do you not consider me your older brother?" His face grew dark as he let out a helpless sigh. "It's unfortunate, your big brother is quite useless. Up until now, I still haven't been able to reach the saint level, otherwise, Ka Diyun definitely wouldn't have been a match for me. Chang Yang, whose words shook Jian Chen's heart, tilting his head up at Ka Diyun, his eyes started to flash cold for a brief second before disappearing. The disdain in his eyes wouldn't dissipate, however, and he immediately said emotionlessly, "Big brother, you should rest up for a second, I'll definitely get revenge for you." With that said, Jian Chen started to move towards the arena. Chang Yang, whose face immediately changed after hearing that, and he pulled at Jian Chen, "Absolutely not. Fourth brother, you are not Ka Diyun's opponent. Don't go." Jian Chen gave an apologetic smile and said, "Big brother, please believe in me." His face exuded a fierce conviction, and he threw off Chang Yang, whose grasp on him, leaping onto the arena. Heavens, what is he planning? It looks like he wants to challenge Ka Diyun. My God, he's gone mad. He's only at the 8th Saint Force layer. To think that he wants to challenge a saint like Ka Diyun, he's only asking for trouble here. As Jian Chen leapt onto the arena, the audience surrounding them cried out in alarm. No one believed that Jian Chen would be an appropriate opponent for a saint like Ka Diyun. He really is a hot head. Ka Diyun is a saint who just beat a person who was at the peak of the 10th layer. How would he win against someone like that? Under the arena, the girl who sat next to Jian Chen in the library muttered as she watched him join the arena. Her entire face was filled with concern. Ka Diyun watched Jian Chen leap up with a blank look, but he quickly regained his wits and snorted with laughter, "What's wrong, Changyang Xiang Tian, do you really think you can fight against me?" Ka Diyun never thought Jian Chen to be a worthy opponent, after all, he was a powerful saint already. Jian Chen responded coldly, "Is it wrong to think that I can?" Stunned, Ka Diyun started to laugh evilly as he smiled at Jian Chen. "Of course, it's definitely okay." Right now, Ka Diyun was thinking about the best way to humiliate Jian Chen, since Jian Chen had humiliated his pretty younger sister, Ka Di Chioli, during the freshman martial arts competition for everyone to see. This had earned hatred from both Ka Diyun and Ka Di Liang, for they both loved their sister dearly. Jian Chen was in no rush, as he walked over to where Chang Yang, whose sword was. As he weighed the sword on his hands, Jian Chen slightly frowned. The sword didn't weigh past 100 pounds, but it was close enough to that weight. If it weren't for the fact that Jian Chen was at the 8th Saint Force layer, then he wouldn't be able to lift the sword at all to use it. In his previous life, Jian Chen would frequently use a sword that had a blade 2 finger widths wide. With that sword, he had brought his swordplay to a level that he had been famous for. With this 2-hand sword, however, Jian Chen felt like one of his arms was bound behind his back, since it was very heavy. He would not be able to use the full extent of his powers, and just swinging the sword with ease would demand a large amount of his energy. It was a shame that with the exception of this sword, there was no other sword around. With a small amount of hesitation, Jian Chen decided to forego the giant sword and fight against Ka Diyun barehanded. This way, he would at least have the advantage in speed and nimbleness. Arriving at the center of the arena, Jian Chen looked at Ka Diyun with an impassive face as he stretched his fists. "You make the first move, I'll fight against you barehanded." Ka Diyun's face narrowed, clearly Jian Chen was looking down on him by fighting barehanded. For an 8th Saint Force layer practitioner to fight against a saint without any weapon while the saint had a saint weapon, was a display of great humiliation towards the saint. Ka Diyun's eye grew cold as he sneered, "Changyang Xiang Tian, you are far too arrogant." The golden sword in his hand began to disappear slowly into the air. "Let it be said that I didn't bully you. Come, I'll fight you without a weapon as well." Hearing this, Jian Chen let loose a strange smile. Without wasting words, he dashed towards Ka Diyun, and used his saint force to amplify his strength as his fist flew at Ka Diyun's head, cutting a sharp whistle through the air. Ka Diyun looked at the first with a bored expression, before returning the blow with his own fist. The two fists collided as a golden light flowed out from Ka Diyun's fist. Only those who reached sainthood would be able to materialize their saint force like this. The moment when the two fists collided against each other, Jian Chen's fist suddenly spread out to become an open palm after the initial contact was made. His hand absorbed the impact so that the blow became as soft as a sponge, as he used Tai Ji Quan to force Ka Di Yun's fist to overextend harmlessly past himself. Ka Di Yun's arm was forced upwards in a weird position as Jian Chen twisted it. In a flash, the strength behind Ka Di Yun's fist dissipated away, as Jian Chen extended his other hand to chop down onto the joint of Ka Di Yun's arm. Kacha. The sound of a bone breaking could be heard, as Jian Chen dislocated Ka Di Yun's arm with an arm chop. Ka Di Yun let out a muffled and pained cry, as the pain in his arm registered within his brain, causing his face to go deathly white. Right after his hand had dislocated Ka Di Yun's arm, Jian Chen did not stop moving. Both of his arms grabbed onto the entire arm and gave it a mighty twist. Ah! By this point, Ka Di Yun couldn't refrain from screaming anymore. Releasing a squeal of pain reminiscent of a wild pig, he felt as if his entire arm had been broken off. Ever since he was small, he had never suffered pain to an extent like this, and so in such a short amount of time, his face was drained of color, as his entire forehead started to drip with sweat. Hearing such a desolate yet miserable shriek, the people who had originally been chattering away during the match went deathly silent. Everyone watched Jian Chen with amazement as they watched the inconceivable happen. This situation was the exact opposite of what everyone was expecting to see. Since when did fourth brother become this amazing? Just looking at this, Ka Di Yun will definitely suffer a lot by Changyang Xiang Tian's hand. However, even if Ka Di Yun doesn't use his saint weapon, he's still a saint, his strength is definitely still greater than mine. Changyang Hu muttered to himself as he watched the match with a dumbstruck expression. Chapter 23. Becoming popular because of skill. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The moment that Ka Di Yun felt pain, he swung out with his other hand at Jian Chen's arms, while aiming his left leg at Jian Chen's groin. Even though one of his arms was useless, Ka Di Yun was still able to launch a counterattack. Even with this unsightly scene, Ka Di Yun had some experience with battles and tried to escape this situation. Seeing a flurry of arms and legs flashing before his eyes, Jian Chen knew that he wouldn't be able to directly take the attacks head-on. He helplessly let go of Ka Di Yun's arm, and used the profound steps to retreat. He managed to dodge Ka Di Yun's attack and circled around to his back, before using his Saint Force to amplify his attack on Ka Di Yun's back. TL note. Profound steps was mentioned earlier back in his room in the Changyang mansion. It's basically him moving fast. Feeling the strong wind behind his back, Ka Di Yun didn't hesitate for a second and evaded Jian Chen by diving to the side. However, even as he dodged, Ka Di Yun was amazed. No matter where he moved, he would always feel a wind blowing on his back. He wasn't able to keep up with Jian Chen's movements. Pang! Ka Di Yun was completely unable to keep up with Jian Chen, who smashed both of his hands into Ka Di Yun's back, creating a cracking sound as he was hit by a violent attack. This caused Ka Di Yun to stagger 2 steps forward, but since he was a strong saint, he immediately steadied himself. However, his face had already paled, as he realized that Jian Chen had hit the same place twice with his fists. Jian Chen's strength could already be measured at the peak of the 9th layer, and despite Ka Di Yun being stronger than him in rank, he was the one being injured more. At that moment, he could only feel a surge of qi and blood course through his body, his organs screaming in pain. As Ka Di Yun steadied himself, Jian Chen had already arrived at his backside another time, and struck at his back with his right hand once more. Although the fist traveled at a speed that made it look like it was as light as a feather, the effect was anything but light. Anyone that had faced off against Jian Chen before would agree that Jian Chen's strength was more extraordinary than it looked. Ka Di Yun turned around abruptly, his eyes were indignant with anger. For a strong person like him to suffer this much from someone who was by all rights weaker than him, his simple plan to humiliate Jian Chen was no longer as simple as he thought. Ha! Ka Di Yun snarled in anger, as his hand started to glow golden with his Saint Force. The huge concentration of Saint force condensed into his hand as he faced Jian Chen, aiming it towards Jian Chen's chest. Seeing Jian Chen attack with a seemingly light fist, Ka Diyun prepared to take it head-on in order to get close to Jian Chen for his own attack. The situation turned into a critical point of the match, as both the fighters' attacks struck each other. Jian Chen's seemingly light and weak fist silently struck against Ka Diyun's chest. Immediately, Ka Diyun's own fist let out a muffled sound as it struck against Jian Chen's body, blowing apart a hole in the academy uniform, and revealing a tender white skin that would be the target of envy by many of the girls. But in the blink of an eye, the skin underneath became a pile of bruises after receiving Ka Diyun's blow. Dang! 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 After receiving a blow from Ka Diyun, Jian Chen's face contorted in pain, and the color started to drain away from his face. And with the blow being enforced by such a huge amount of strength, his legs weren't enough to prevent him from sliding back, until he was a few inches away from the edge of the arena. At this moment, other than his paling face, Jian Chen did not seem to have any other problems, despite Ka Diyun using his Saint force to accentuate his attack. Although Jian Chen was only at the 8th layer, because he had been using Azulite Sword Law to constantly cultivate his body since he was young, he had strengthened every single organ and part of his body to the utmost degree. So while on the outside, it seemed that Jian Chen's physical body was quite weak, his actual ability to resist and take damage would leave anyone flabbergasted. Even though Ka Diyun was a saint, without using his saint weapon, his regular attacks would not be able to seriously wound Jian Chen. At the most, Jian Chen would sport some small bruises. On the other hand, while Ka Diyun was standing at the same place, his face had scrunched up in major pain as his body began to visibly tremble from the pain he was feeling. Before, Jian Chen's fist that seemed to be as light as a feather, impacted against his stomach and caused a peculiar feeling to be transferred over into him. The power forcibly entered his body and suddenly went berserk as it exploded within him, causing his internal body to go crazy from the pain. Ka Diyun's face became incomparably dark, as he used all the saint force within his body began to combat the power that was rebelling inside. Since his saint force was stronger than Jian Chen's, the foreign power within him was cleared away quickly, but the damage was done. At this point, Ka Diyun was suffering from internal damages as well. The damages weren't very serious, but it would definitely impact his performance in the battle for the worse if it dragged on. Ka Diyun glared at the calm Jian Chen in front of him with a shocked expression. He hadn't ever imagined that he would be put in such a difficult spot as a saint by someone who was lower ranked than him. Although he wasn't using his saint weapon, his strength was still stronger than those at the peak of the 10th layer, let alone the 8th layer Jian Chen. At that moment, Ka Diyun finally realized how hard it was to deal with Jian Chen, but it was too late to stop. Over the past few confrontations, he understood that without using the saint weapon, he would have a difficult time beating Jian Chen and might even lose to him. With the saint weapon he would definitely win against him, but that wouldn't be a bright situation. Besides, he had also clearly stated that he wouldn't use a saint weapon against Jian Chen. If he went back on his word now, then even if he won, his reputation would plummet to the bottom. After all, there were plenty of people watching the match, along with some seniors. Not only that, but he was Ka Diyun, Jessen Kingdom's elite elder son of the Ka Di clan. He couldn't lose face now. Ka Diyun was starting to reflect on his actions now, but then Jian Chen decided to charge at him with both his arms outstretched. Rapidly approaching, Jian Chen was using a weird technique to cause his moves to become unpredictable and made him look like a bolt of lightning. In Ka Diyun's eyes, Jian Chen had become an afterimage. Ka Diyun narrowly blocked Jian Chen's strike. His right arm was dislocated, and he hadn't had enough time to pop it back into place, so he could only use his left hand to block against Jian Chen's attacks. Because of this, in face of Jian Chen's saint force, Ka Diyun fell from his invincible position, and began to fight back earnestly now. He no longer belittled Jian Chen, and started to view him as an opponent of the same level. The two people continued to fight at a fast-paced speed. The battlefield became fierce. Jian Chen didn't dare to hold back since Ka Di Yun's strength was much stronger than his own. With both of them in a deadlock, the two could only defend against each other. Jian Chen's attacks were getting stronger and stronger, while Ka Di Yun was finding it harder and harder to resist. Gradually in front of Ka Di Yun's eyes, all he could see were the palms of Jian Chen's hands. His eyes were getting too tired to differentiate between the after images of Jian Chen, and he could only rely on his listening abilities to tell when and where Jian Chen would attack. Finally, Ka Di Yun became careless, and Jian Chen struck out at his left shoulder with a powerful strike. Ka Di Yun couldn't help but lag behind, as Jian Chen began to bombard him with a plethora of attacks. It was almost as if Ka Di Yun was in a very violent storm where he was battered from every angle. Pang. 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 Jian Chen repeatedly hit Ka Di Yun on the shoulder with ferocious attacks, and even Ka Di Yun's strong saint power could not bear the attacks. He constantly retreated. And a trace of blood trickled out of Ka Di Yun's mouth. Seeing that Ka Di Yun was already driven to the edge of the arena, Jian Chen's eyes fiercely flashed. Growling, Jian Chen gathered the saint force into his hand and struck Ka Di Yun in the chest another time. This fist was a lot stronger than the last, and the moment the fist connected, Ka Di Yun fell from the arena down onto the ground below. Jian Chen stood on the arena while breathing heavily. Since he was constantly using his entire strength, he had exhausted his supply of saint force, to the point where it had almost none left within his body. If Ka Di Yun did not accept defeat here and now, then Jian Chen would not be able to maintain his odds of winning for long. The arena became quiet, as everyone stared at the lone figure standing on top of the arena. At this moment, everyone showed incomprehensible expressions. This had already exceeded anyone's wildest guess, and no one had thought that Jian Chen would win against a saint. Most importantly, he had defeated a saint while coming out almost unharmed. Even though the saint didn't use a saint weapon, this outcome was no less surprising nor predictable. At this moment, the arena was completely silent, so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. There were over 200 people that were watching, but not a single person dared to make a sound. Big brother. A voice finally broke the spell of silence over the arena as the Ka Di siblings sped over to where Ka Di Yun lay on the floor. As if awakened, everyone started to burst into noise, as if the seal of a pot had been broken. All around the arena, people were chattering away noisily with excitement and shock. Heavens, I'm not dreaming, an 8th layer student managed to beat a saint. This is an unprecedented event in the academy history. Is that Changyang Xiang Tian really at the 8th layer? Even a person at the peak of the 10th layer wouldn't necessarily be able to beat a saint who wasn't using his saint weapon. Changyang Xiang Tian's strength can't possibly be only at the 8th saint force layer. Who knows, he might have already condensed a saint weapon. Otherwise, how else would he be able to beat a student like Senior Ka Di Yun, a saint? Perhaps Changyang Xiang Tian used some sort of despicable method to win. Jian Chen didn't bother to answer any of the comments and jumped down to where his older brother Changyang Hu was. Looking at his brother's expression of extreme shock, Jian Chen laughed, "Big brother, I didn't disappoint you. I've won." Changyang Hu became emotional after hearing that, and hugged Jian Chen with both arms. "Fourth brother, you're seriously amazing. You managed to beat Ka Di Yun, a saint. Your big brother truly admires you," he said as he wrapped Jian Chen in a huge bear hug. Jian Chen let loose a happy smile from the affection, before he gradually disentangled himself from his brother's arms. "Big brother, there's too many people here to talk. Let's leave this place first." Chapter 24. Skill. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Changyang Hu unconsciously turned around to look at the crowd before nodding his head. "All right, fourth brother, let's go to your room first. You definitely have to tell me how you beat Ka Di Yun, and then later tonight, I'll grab a few friends to come and celebrate." Jian Chen smiled happily at his brother. "Big brother, I can teach you how I beat Ka Di Yun, but let's forget about the celebration." "Fine, I'll listen to you. Come on, Fourth brother, let's go back to your dorm, it's far too noisy here. Chan Yang-hu started to pull his younger brother back towards the direction of the dorms. Chan Yang Xiang Tian. Before Jian Chen could take a step, a gentle and exquisite voice called out to him. Hearing the familiar voice, Jian Chen blanked out for a moment before turning around. Looking at the speaker, he recognized the figure of the running girl, particularly the pretty girl who had sat next to him in the library earlier. Yes. Jian Chen questioned, as he indifferently looked at the young girl, who was so beautiful that it would be easy to cause a city to fight over her. The girl's voice was like a gentle stream of water as she laughed joyously. Slowly extending her arm out to reveal a purse, she happily said, Chanyang Xiang Tian, you managed to win me 100 purple coins, I really have to thank you. Her voice was extraordinarily soft, and also very pleasant to listen to. It was almost as if she was a skylark singing on a peaceful day. Hearing this, Chan Yang-hu appeared to have suddenly realized something. He slapped his forehead in disbelief. Yeah, I just remembered. I put down 100 purple coins, that was my entire savings and I didn't get it back. Fourth brother, you go on without me, your big brother has to get his money back. And with that, Chan Yang-hu vanished like the wind, back to where the crowd of gamblers were. Looking at Chan Yang-hu rush back for his money, Jian Chen couldn't help but laugh. At that moment, the girl slowly walked up to Jian Chen, studying his handsome features with her inquisitive eyes. Hello. Changyang Xiang Tian, my name is Yu Yu. May I ask you a question? Jian Chen laughed and replied, Miss Yu Yu, if you have a question, you should go on ahead and ask, but I can't guarantee an answer. No worries. Yu Yu gently laughed before asking, Changyang Xiang Tian, is your strength is really only of the 8th Saint Force layer? Jian Chen hesitated for a moment before he nodded his head, that's right, at the moment, I am currently in the 8th Saint Force layer, but I have a feeling I'll be making a breakthrough into the 9th layer soon. Yu Yu was surprised after hearing his answer. With an astounded look, she exclaimed, Changyang Xiang Tian, you mean you really haven't reached the saint level? Her voice carried some doubt. Clearly, she didn't believe him entirely. Noticing the disbelief in her voice, Jian Chen furrowed his brows and spoke with some annoyance, Miss Yu Yu, I seem to have answered your question. Even though she was a beautiful girl that could cause countless cities to fight for her, to Jian Chen, she was no different than the average girl. Yu Yu immediately waved her hands in an apologetic motion as she laughed, I'm sorry, Changyang Xiang Tian, I'm just far too amazed. I hope you didn't take offense to what I said. Her voice trailed off as Chan Yang-hu came running back with a joyful face and a fat coin bag. When he arrived by Jian Chen's side, he was tossing the purse up and down his hand as he snickered, Fourth brother, your big brother is very wise. In less than an hour, I've won 100 purple coins. 100 purple coins was by no means a small number to a commoner, and for those who only ate a simple amount of food in their lives, 100 purple coins could feed a family of 3 for the rest of their lives. Staring at the coin purse in his brother's hands, Jian Chen started to smile and said, Miss Yu Yu, if you have no other questions, then I'll be leaving first. Yu Yu smiled back at him, that's fine, I won't hold you up any longer. I haven't finished reading my book either, so I'll be returning to the library. Changyang Xiang Tian, I'll see you later. Soon after, Jian Chen brought his older brother back to his dorm and closed the door as they both walked in. Immediately, Chan Yang-hu impatiently asked, Fourth brother, you've got to tell me what you did to beat Ka Di-yun, and how strong you really are. It couldn't only be at the 8th Saint Force layer, you have to be a saint. As he spoke, Chan Yang-hu's face revealed an impatient, excited face as he waited for an answer. Jian Chen gently shook his head, I'm not. Big brother, my actual strength should be not too far away from the 9th Saint Force layer. As for reaching the saint level, I believe I'm still quite far away from it. Chan Yang-hu looked at him with doubt, Fourth brother, if you say you haven't reached the level of a saint, then how did you beat Ka Di-yun? Laughing, Jian Chen replied, how did I beat Ka Di-yun? Big brother, did you not see the match clearly? Changyang, whose head drooped down in embarrassment as he blushed, that his daughter. Fourth brother. Actually I wasn't able to see the match all that clearly. Could you please tell your older brother? Although Changyang, who had seen the match from start to finish, there were some things that could not be comprehended by eyesight alone. For example, Changyang, who had not been able to comprehend what happened when Jian Chen struck at Ka Di-yun with a punch that seemed to be as light as a feather, but still managed to significantly damage. Jian Chen sat on his bed, calmly looked at Changyang, who, and said, "Big brother, the only reason a student of the 8th layer like me was able to beat a saint like Ka Di-yun was because I relied on a technique to win." A technique. Changyang, who was still skeptical. He was no stranger when it came to techniques and skill, because in the academy, many of the teachers would often talk about their knowledge of their personal techniques. In a fight against equally matched experts, one would need to use extremely strong techniques in order to win, but such techniques weren't so easy to train in. Even if they did learn the techniques, only those with battle experience would be able to learn and perfect a technique to the point of being able to incorporate it into their fighting styles. What Changyang who really confused was that, not only was Jian Chen younger than him, but he has also only been at the academy for a few days now. Changyang who couldn't help but be shocked when he saw that Jian Chen had mastered such a technique. "Fourth brother, where did you learn a technique like that?" Changyang who asked curiously. Jian Chen shook his head sadly, "Big brother, I can't tell you that." Upon hearing that, Changyang who had a look of sorrow on his face. The next thing Jian Chen had said though, brought his spirits back up. "Big brother, if you are willing to learn a martial technique, I can teach you." "For real? That's great. Fourth brother, when can you get started on teaching me? How about now?" He was anxious to get started, and wanted to learn this amazing technique right away. Once he learned the technique, then it was even possible for him to challenge saints who had condensed their saint weapons with his current power. Jian Chen laughed, "Big brother, it would be better to start tomorrow. I'll be waiting for you in the Eastern Grotto outside the academy tomorrow morning." "Alright fourth brother, it's a deal. I'll be at the grotto tomorrow morning," Changyang who promised. Although many of the academy teachers could help instruct one on learning a martial technique, he knew in his heart that fighting techniques were best taught by the previous generation in a clan. Techniques taught by the professors here would not be strong enough to overwhelm any of his opponents. Afterwards, the two brothers chatted for a while, until Changyang who finally left. Because Jian Chen had used up most of his saint force to fight against Ka Di-yun, he was exhausted and slightly injured. Because of that, he decided to use the Class 3 Monster Core in order to recover his health. Little did he know that, the whole academy was already in an uproar about how Jian Chen had beaten Ka Di-yun. There wasn't anyone in the academy who hadn't heard about it, and it shocked both students and teachers alike. Everyone thought this to be inconceivable, and an event of this scale was practically unprecedented in the entire history of the Kargath Academy. No one had ever heard of a saint, who had been strong enough to easily beat a person at the peak of the 10th layer be beaten by someone only at the 8th layer. Even if a saint did not use a saint weapon, she could still easily defeat someone of the 9th layer, let alone a freshman who was only at the 8th layer. The news of the fight between Jian Chen and Ka Di-yun soon reached the ears of the headmaster. Within the middle of the central tower in Kargath Academy, the headmaster pondered about the situation while standing next to the open window. As his eyebrows knit together, he asked, "Bai-en, is what you say true? Changyang Xiang Tian actually beat the Saint Ka Di-yun while he was only at the 8th Saint Force layer?" Even the headmaster couldn't believe it the first time, and his eyes twinkled in curiosity. The vice headmaster, Bai-en, stood respectfully behind the headmaster. In response to the headmaster's words, Bai-en replied, "Headmaster, I've heard all of the students talk about it, but I'm not too sure of the exact details. But right now, this event has set the academy upside down. Practically every teacher knows that Changyang Xiang Tian has beaten the higher-ranked Ka Di-yun. Rumors have it though, that Ka Di-yun didn't use his saint weapon, and fought bare-handed against Jian Chen. The headmaster stroked his long white beard, in deep thought. Since the rumors spread this wide, it would appear that it is true. It seems that Changbai has brought quite the complicated youngster. For a saint to be beaten by an 8th layer student, how inconceivable. Even if the saint had recently broken through and didn't use his weapon, his strength should still be higher than one at the 10th layer. In all my years at Kargath Academy, I have never seen such a match where someone with a lower level won. Headmaster, what should we do about this situation? Sooner or later, the seniors of the school will search for the 8th layer student who beat a saint, and become an inconvenience for Changyang Xiang Tian, said Baiyan with a respectful tone. The amount of respect Baiyan had for headmaster couldn't be measured, as it could even be considered as worship. The headmaster turned towards Baiyan and casually waved his hand. Forget it, let them handle it by themselves. As long as they don't make a big deal out of it, we won't interfere. Besides, this should be a test for them. If they can't take everything thrown at them, then they won't mature into fine warriors. Chapter 25. Instructing Big Brother. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In a blink of an eye, 3 days had passed since the fight between Ka Diyun and Jian Chen had taken place. Pretty much everyone in Kargath Academy knew about Changyang Xiang Tian now. You couldn't even walk a few steps without hearing his name. In the past 3 days, Jian Chen had spent every morning teaching his big brother martial techniques in the grottos. Other than that, he spent the rest of his time cultivating. The Class 3 Monster Core had drastically improved his cultivation rate. He wanted to hurry up and reach the 10th layer so that he could rush straight into the saint level. Jian Chen had been very curious on how condensing a saint weapon worked, but according to book explanations, once the saint weapon is condensed, it replaced one's saint force. From that moment on, the saint weapon would be the origin for one's power. While it remains in the body, it releases saint force, and when one summons it, the saint weapon becomes one's strongest weapon. With it, one's attack would be multiplied. A saint weapon was one's energy. If it were to break, then that person would lose all of their cultivation progress as well as receiving a fatal injury. If the break was fatal enough, then the practitioner would die. However, a saint weapon was extremely strong. It wouldn't break unless the opposing side was vastly stronger than them. The next morning, Jian Chen opened his eyes, signifying the completion of last night's cultivation. After 3 entire days of cultivation, the saint force inside Jian Chen had been strengthened, and he estimated that he was long since past the 9th layer. He would have to test his saint force to find out whether or not he became a 10th layer practitioner or a saint. Getting off his bed, Jian Chen got dressed quickly before heading out of his dorm. The sky was still dark, and majority of the students were still cultivating or sleeping. The sports field was relatively peaceful since there were no people in sight. Only in remote corners did Jian Chen see a few other early risers practicing. Passing the field, Jian Chen immediately headed towards the grotto. These past few days, Jian Chen was to spend some time every morning to teach his older brother some knowledge about the aspects of fighting. After all, in his previous world, Jian Chen was a wanderer and an expert for many years, so he had participated in countless battles. The amount of battle experience far surpassed that of the Kargath Academy teachers. If actually compared, Jian Chen already had the qualifications to go teach the Kargath Academy teachers. That when Jian Chen arrived at the grotto, he discovered that his older brother Changyang who was already waiting there, and was currently sitting on a tree stump. He had an aimless expression, as he randomly swept his gaze around his surroundings in boredom. As soon as Jian Chen appeared, he immediately stood up in excitement, and jumped up from the tree stump. He happily said, "Fourth brother, you've finally arrived." Jian Chen smiled, "Big brother, why did you arrive so early?" "Hee, it's habit, just a habit." "Fourth brother, let's start now. I spent the whole day yesterday trying to make heads or tails of the utilization of power you mentioned yesterday morning, but I was still unable to understand it. Can you explain it in detail to your big brother, one more time?" Changyang Hu asked in a slightly embarrassed tone. "Of course I can. Jian Chen smiled, and replied, "Big brother, I'll tell you about that tomorrow morning. Today, I'll personally demonstrate it to you." Saying this, Jian Chen picked up a skinny stick next to his feet. "Big brother, watch closely." Saying this, Jian Chen took the branch and lightly waved it in the direction of a small tree, about the thickness of his wrist. When the branch approached the small tree, the skinny branch directly left his hand and silently pierced through the small tree, as if there were no obstacles at all. It seemed almost as if the small tree was originally only a mirage. As he watched this strange scene, Chang Yonghu started to have major doubts. At that moment, a rustling sound was heard, as the small tree started to split in the middle, the top half crashing down. Chang Yonghu opened his eyes wide and immediately ran towards the tree only to see the strangely smooth incision on it. It was almost as if a sharp sword had chopped the tree down. It was truly unimaginable since this fine cut done by a light slash of a flimsy tree branch had been enough to chop through the small tree. Immediately, Chang Yonghu's eyes switched over to the small tree branch in Jian Chen's hand. He ran on over and took it into his hands to look over, but not matter how much he looked at it, it seemed to be an average tree branch. As he brandished it softly, the tree branch merely swayed with his hand. Seeing this, Chang Yonghu's doubt grew even more. He really did not understand how such a plain-looking tree branch could cut down a tree trunk the size of his wrist. He exerting some strength into his fingers, and the tree branch in his hand broke in half. "Fourth brother, how in the world did you do this? How can such a weak little tree branch cut down a small tree?" Chang Yonghu asked, the doubt on his face could be clearly seen. Jian Chen laughed, "Big brother, this only requires Saint force to accomplish it. Don't say it's because of the tree branch, even if it's a needle or a sewing thread, they both can cut through a tree branch with ease. Of course, my current strength isn't strong enough to do that." "What, a sewing needle and string can cut through a tree? Fourth brother, do you have a fever or something? This can't be possible." Chang Yonghu cried out in shock. He couldn't believe what Jian Chen had said at all since he had never heard of such a thing since he was born. To him, this was an impossible feat. Jian Chen smiled from the start to finish of Chang Yonghu's outburst, he had not expected him to react differently. But Jian Chen didn't bother to explain. When the day came where Chang Yonghu's strength was strong enough, he would understand. Jian Chen picked up another tree branch from the ground and said, "Big brother, you're still wondering how I could use a tree branch to cut through a tree, right? Take another look, I'll demonstrate one more time." Chang Yonghu went silent as he became entirely focused on the tree branch in Jian Chen's hand. He didn't dare to get distracted now, just in case he missed out on some details. Waving the tree branch in his hands, Jian Chen's eyes flashed once before the tree branch suddenly distorted in his hands, causing the bent parts of the tree branch to slowly straighten. In the way it had been warped, it was almost as if it had a life of its own, since it was moving in the same manner as a snake would. It slowly started to move around in midair. Those who saw the sight would only be able to describe it as weird. Chang Yonghu's eyes grew wide from this strange display as he couldn't believe what he was seeing. With his eyes so wide, he looked as if he'd seen a ghost. He couldn't believe it at all, it was only a tree branch, and yet it had unexpectedly started to move around by itself. Jian Chen's eyes started to emit an amazing light as he cried, "Big brother, please watch carefully." Jian Chen grabbed onto the perfectly straight tree branch and walked forward with it towards another small tree nearby. His movements weren't fast at all, in actuality, they were very slow. Inching towards the tree, the moment his tree branch touched against the tree, it was as if the tree branch was being absorbed into the tree. Slowly, the tree branch went deeper and deeper into the tree trunk before it finally skewered itself through it. This act stunned Chang Yonghu into silence as he focused onto the impaled tree trunk. His mouth dropped open so much that an egg could fit inside. His eyes were filled with an expression of disbelief. "Fourth brother, how did you do that?" Chang Yonghu shivered in awe. Even his heart was violently pulsing as his eyes were still planted on the tree. With a faint smile, Jian Chen answered, "Big brother, it's actually not that hard to do this. As long as you harmonize your Saint Force with the tree branch, then even though it's just a normal tree branch, it will turn into a sharp weapon. If one's strength is strong enough, then the tree branch can cut as easily as an iron sword." To harmonize the Saint Force and the tree branch. Chang Yang, whose eyebrows furrowed in concentration as he muttered. Immediately, he grabbed a tree branch on the floor and following Jian Chen's instructions, he began to infuse the tree branch slowly with his Saint Force. Ping! At the very moment when his Saint Force made contact with the tree branch violently exploded and sent pieces of it flying throughout the air. "Big brother, your Saint Force is excessively fierce, so the frail tree branch wasn't able to bear it. Also, you're not proficient enough to control your Saint Force to a fine level yet. Remember, when you harmonize the Saint Force into the tree branch, you must make sure to transform the Saint Force into a soft type of energy, not a violent one," Jian Chen instructed. Hearing that, Chang Yang, who became puzzled, "Fourth brother, how does one make their Saint Force become a soft type of energy?" Turning the Saint Force into a soft type of energy is merely just a different way of using it, that's all. Trying to explain this mystery anymore would be useless since only you can understand yourself. Big brother, starting from today, whenever you have spare time, try to harmonize the tree branch with your Saint Force. This way, it'll also strengthen your Saint Force. In the future, if you can reach the level I showed you today, it'll bring you many good benefits when you cultivate. Jian Chen explained, almost as if he was a teacher instructing his students. However, Jian Chen knew that if Chang Yang, who wanted to accomplish what he had just demonstrated, trying to make a frail tree branch strong enough to pierce through a small tree in such a small time, it would definitely not be accomplished in such a short amount of time. This required a high mastery of one's Saint Force, and without a sufficient amount of practice, Chang Yang who would definitely not be able to harmonize the two together. Having a wooden tree branch harden into a sharp weapon like an iron sword was not simple at all. Infusing an iron sword with Saint Force would be easier, for example, but while an iron sword could support a larger amount of Saint Force, a tree branch could not and required a gentle control. Chang Yang, who nodded, and after some contemplation, once again picked up the branch to try again. However, without exception, every single one of his attempts resulted in failure, not a single time did he succeed. He was completely unable to merge the spirit force into the tree branch. Every time his inner spirit force approached the tree branch would explode, unable to bear his overly fierce and intense spirit force. Jian Chen stood on a side and watched Chang Yang who practice, and at the same time, he continued to instruct his brother. They continued all the way until the sun had risen above them. Only then did Jian Chen leave the grotto, leaving Chang Yang who alone as he continued to try without stopping. Next to him, the ground already had a huge pile of broken tree branches. Chapter 26. Protection Fee. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The sun was out as Jian Chen walked across the sports field, where quite a few students were already exercising. Sparing a glance at those students, Jian Chen proceeded to move on towards the library. During the past 3 days, Jian Chen was constantly cultivating his Saint Force and did not have the time to go to the library at all. In Jian Chen's eyes, the only thing the academy had to offer that really attracted him was the library. When it came to the classes taught by the teachers, Jian Chen didn't have a single speck of interest, and he personally felt that it was a waste of time. The teachers didn't have anything worthwhile to teach him, but the library did. After all, the library had records of everything that had happened on the Tianyuan continent. Hey look, isn't that Changyang Xiang Tian? I heard he beat the saint, Ka Di Yun, while he was only at the 8th Saint Force layer. It is. I even watched Changyang Xiang Tian fight in the freshman competition, but I didn't get a chance to see him fight against Ka Di Yun. What a great shame. On the sports field, 2 males who saw Jian Chen were pointing from afar, while looking at him with a huge amount of respect. Wow, Changyang Xiang Tian is so cool and so strong. For him to beat the saint, Ka Di Yun, while at the 8th Saint Force layer, he really is my idol. Another first-year minor noble girl cried, as her eyes sparkled with emotions. More and more people started to gather on the field. As Jian Chen walked across the sports field, many of the surrounding people started to notice him. Ever since he had beaten Ka Di Yun 3 days ago, his name had spread around the academy in a mere few hours, and his reputation had skyrocketed to the point where even the teachers of Kargath Academy knew him by name. Jian Chen quickly crossed the field into a shady area which would lead him to the library. Because there weren't many people at the library, the path towards the library was fairly serene and quiet. With almost no people in sight, all Jian Chen could see was the scenery of nature, as the wind scattered countless leaves into the air with a rustling sound. Just then, the shadows of a few people suddenly appeared in front of Jian Chen. It was a group of 4 people who were laughing and talking amongst themselves, each one of them looking to be around years old. A simple look at their school uniforms could identify them as students of the academy as well. Jian Chen didn't pay any attention to the group of students in front of him, and proceeded to walk past them. But as he just crossed them, the 4 students suddenly stopped talking, and then quickly surrounded Jian Chen. Stopping, Jian Chen looked at the students surrounding him and noted that they were all seniors. With a cold smile, he asked, "Dear seniors, what is the meaning of this?" The 4 students stood tall and proud as they circled Jian Chen before one of them spoke up. "Kid, you look unfamiliar, you must be a freshman." The one in front of Jian Chen smiled with an unfriendly stare at him. Jian Chen did not show any emotion as he stared at the speaker, speaking to his face. He gave a faint smile. "That's right, this one here is a freshman. What do these seniors want with a freshman like me?" Hearing this, the senior chuckled, "If you want to live peacefully at Kargath Academy, then it's important that you have people like us protecting you. But if you want our protection, then you need to pay us. Since you're a freshman, then you just need to pay us 10 purple coins, how about it, a good deal, right?" The student had a confident smile on his face. In his mind, he had already intimidated Jian Chen. To him, Jian Chen was smaller, and therefore weaker in terms of strength, and he felt that he had definitely overpowered him already. He was confident in his skills as well, since he had already pulled this off many different times, making him an experienced veteran. If he had met a stronger student, then of course he would have thought twice before pulling this scam off, but Jian Chen didn't seem like a strong student, so this would definitely be a total success. Resistance would be futile. If Jian Chen was just another commoner student, then the 4 students would not dare extort a protection fee from Jian Chen if they wanted to remain in the academy. After all the upperclassmen in Kargath Academy knew that the headmaster always sided with the commoners of the academy. But these 4 students have been living in the academy for some time now, and they could tell which student was a commoner and which student was a noble. So when they saw Jian Chen, they could clearly tell that Jian Chen was a noble, and therefore dared to extort him for money. Hearing him, Jian Chen internally snorted. He hadn't thought that people would try to collect protection fees from him. "Seniors, I am very sorry, but I will have to refuse your protection," Jian Chen stated. Before they could even respond, he shouldered his way past the older students and resumed to walk towards the library once more. Jian Chen's actions caused the 4 students to be startled. This situation had gone against their expectations, and none of them had expected to see Jian Chen so straightforwardly decline their protection. The 4 students immediately turned towards Jian Chen, who was walking away from them. Their eyes flashed dangerously. The one student who had his shoulder pushed aside snarled, while his face turned unsightly. "Motherf * King Brat, stop right there!" he yelled angrily. Stomping towards him, he immediately cut Jian Chen off from his path, as the other 3 followed him and formed the circle, once more confining Jian Chen in the middle. "You dared to knock against me, are you tired of living?" The initial speaker cried before fiercely reaching out to slap Jian Chen across the face with his palm. Seeing the hand approach his face, Jian Chen's blank stare instantly became sharp, and his eyes flashed with a deep coldness. He lifted his own right hand up to block the incoming hand, so quickly that the other students couldn't react in time. After intercepting that student's hand that was halfway to his face, Jian Chen lashed out with his foot, and his kick connected with the student's chest. With a small gasp, the student was sent flying backwards, before he heavily fell down onto the ground some distance away. The situation had suddenly escalated, surprising the other 3 students. None of them would have thought that their previously easy target to bully would suddenly become like this. Before they could even react, Jian Chen had kicked their companion across the place. But they soon regained their wits and started to sweat. Without even needing to discuss it amongst themselves, they all concluded that they needed to dispose of Jian Chen. Although they knew Jian Chen's strength wasn't normal, these 4 students had run rampant in Kargath Academy and were not afraid of him. Even if Jian Chen was that strong, the 4 of them combined could take him on, so they had nothing to fear. Not only that, but they all had strong clans backing them up, thus, they had a strong shield with them throughout the entire academy. Sensing that the 3 other students were exuding out their saint force, Jian Chen looked at them with a hint of disdain. The moment the 3 prepared to fight, the levels of their saint force had been revealed to him. The 3 of them were roughly at the 10th layer of saint force. The 3 went into motion very quickly, and in a blink of an eye, they were in front of Jian Chen. However, at the crucial moment, Jian Chen's body swayed and dodged each one of their attacks. While the 3 attacks failed to make contact, Jian Chen didn't wait for them to recover, and immediately slammed his fist into one of the students' foreheads so quickly that none of them could react. Pang! The student who had his forehead hit immediately fainted onto the floor. At the same time, Jian Chen's right leg kicked one of the other students in the chest. Following the dull thud, because the youth had long been prepared, he managed to endure and only stumbled back a few steps after receiving the kick from Jian Chen, and quickly steadied himself. Despite that, his complexion had turned pale as the 2 huge forces of energy hidden in Jian Chen's kick had jolted his internal organs. Furthermore, faint strands of saint force had also flowed through Jian Chen's leg into the youth's body, wreaking havoc among his internal organs. Just as the youth had stabilized himself, Jian Chen's second leg had already once again kicked out. Leaving behind afterimages in the air, the leg landed onto the chest of the youth once again. Moreover, the second kick landed perfectly on the same spot as the first, beautifully superimposing themselves on each other. Having received 2 heavy hits in a row on the same spot, the damage the youth suffered was not as simple as adding 1 + 1. When Jian Chen's second kick landed on the youth's chest, even if he had the strength of a 10th layer saint force, he would still suffer serious injuries. Waves of acute pain emitted from the vital organs within his body, instantly turning the youth's face white. His internal chi was also blocked, causing him to have extreme difficulty breathing. He staggered back a few steps before one last unsteady step brought him crashing to the ground, and left him unable to stand back up again. Seeing Jian Chen effortlessly dispatch a comrade who had a strength comparable to his own in the blink of an eye, the remaining youth's complexion changed. The foot that was just about to rush towards Jian Chen suddenly stopped in its place. It was as if the soles of his feet grew roots which extended deep into the ground. The youth did not dare to take a step forward. Eyes filled with vigilance, the youth stared at Jian Chen with an expression that had lost the smugness from before, and was instead now filled with an intense concentration. Jian Chen's calm gaze turned to glance at the youth, the corners of his mouth betraying traces of a sneer. Without a word, he turned and left towards the direction of the library. After Jian Chen left, the 2 youths who had been beaten to the ground by Jian Chen raggedly crawled up from the ground, eyes seething with a poisonous hatred as they bore holes into Jian Chen's back. One of them grumbled in a low voice, "Who is he, to be so strong that even all of us together were far from his match? Is this really a new student who had enrolled this year? How can he be so strong? Who cares who he is, since he dared to offend us, we absolutely cannot forgive him." In a furious tone, another person also cursed. His tone was also somewhat weak, as if he was gasping for breath. This was the youth that had been kicked twice by Jian Chen. Presently, his internal organs had already received a serious jolt. If it were not for the fact that his strength was originally above that of Jian Chen's, he wouldn't even have the strength to stand at this point. Chapter 27. Incoming Trouble. 1. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Immediately, the spared student ran over to the fallen two students. Concerned, he asked the pale youth that Jian Chen had kicked twice, Luo Yun, "Are you all right?" The student named Luo Yun nodded his head and spoke with a weak voice, "I'll be fine after a few days of cultivation." Turning around, he asked the other injured student and whispered, "Carl, you can find information around the academy faster than us. Find out what that brat's name is, then have Master Cheng sort him out." Hearing his friend, Carl thought for a second before responding, "There's no need to, I think I already know who he is." The other two students' face lit up as Luo Yun said, "That's great then, Carl, who is he?" In this year's annual freshman competition, there was an unusually strong competitor, the very same one that beat the Saint, Ka Di Yun, while being an 8th Saint Force layer practitioner. "I think he's that person." Carl's face grew dark as he said it. As the two students heard Carl, their faces immediately changed. Looking at each other, Luo Yun said, "Could he really be that Changyang Xiang Tian?" Carl nodded his head, "It's very possible. Within the newest group of freshmen, only Changyang Xiang Tian could beat me. If he really is Changyang Xiang Tian, then we can't even be considered his opponents on any reasonable level if he can really beat that saint, Ka Di Yun. Even if he didn't use his saint weapon, that's still enough proof of Changyang Xiang Tian's strength. Humph, even if he really is Changyang Xiang Tian, he still dared to cross my path. I definitely won't let him have a peaceful time at this academy," spoke the first person who had been attacked by Jian Chen. Luo Yun's white face started to sneer as he growled, "That's good, our Luo clan's young master had been asking around for news about Changyang Xiang Tian recently. If he hears about this, the young master will be happy. It's a pity that we didn't know where he was for the past few days. After searching for him, who knew that he would coincidentally just show up here and now? Luo Yun, you go find the young master of your Luo clan, Chen Feng, and I will call out Master Cheng." "I doubt that Changyang Xiang Tian would be a match for Master Cheng." Carl growled. "Fine, we'll all do what we need to, but I suggest that we leave one person behind to continue observing Changyang Xiang Tian. Since the academy is so large, if Changyang Xiang Tian decides to hide, we'd never be able to find him," Luo Yun proposed. Carl nodded his head before turning to his friend behind him, "Chen Feng, you stay here and observe him, I'll go find Master Cheng." "No problem." Chen Feng promised without hesitation. After the tasks had been split up, Chen Feng left to trail Jian Chen, while the two other students picked up the still unconscious one and left to do their own task. Within the library, Jian Chen sat down at a nearby table with 2 books and began to eagerly read. Because the day was still early, the library was very empty and quiet. Aside from Jian Chen, there was only a middle-aged female janitor nearby bustling around. Bo the woman was around 40 years old with an average appearance. Since she had no talent in cultivation, she was only at the 6th Saint Force layer, even though she was already 40. Even the weakest student in Kargath Academy was stronger than her. The woman tilted her head up to look at the studying Jian Chen, and although she didn't know his name, Jian Chen had left a deep impression on her. Aside from the past 3 days, Jian Chen had always been the first student to enter the library, and was always studying for the whole day. There were even some days where he didn't eat lunch to continue reading. The janitor lady had already been serving the academy for many years, but Jian Chen had been the very first student she had ever seen that was so hardworking. "What a hardworking child," she had muttered to herself as she set out to do her tasks. In a large room, a youth around 20 years old stood in the middle of the room with his eyes closed. His body was positioned in a very strange way, and like a log, he just stood there without moving a single inch. Dong dong dong. At that moment, a muffled knock was heard from the other side. At the same time, the youth with the closed eyes began to slowly open them, and maintaining his strange posture, he stared at the door. "Who is it?" he called out. "My lord, it's me, Luo Yun," came the voice from outside. "Enter," he stated. The door opened, allowing the 20-year-old man to see one of the 4 students that was beaten up by Jian Chen. Luo Yun. Luo Yun looked at the weirdly positioned youth without batting an eye, as if this wasn't a strange occurrence. That was because this weird position was actually the Luo clan's method of cultivation. In the Tian Yuan continent, there weren't many training manuals recorded. Among the few of them were cultivation meditation, and even less people had mastered a new position to cultivate in. The Luo clan was definitely the latter and would put their bodies into a position unique to them in order to maximize their cultivation. Luo Yun walked over to the other youth and stooped over in respect. "Master, for the past few days you've been searching for the whereabouts for Changyang Xiang Tian. I've just recently found and met him." Although Luo Yun had a great standing within his clan, in front of this youth, even he would not dare to be arrogant. That was because this youth was Luo Jian, the first son of the clan leader of the Luo clan. Along with the loving affection from the clan leader, he was deemed to be the future successor of the Luo clan, and so Luo Yun had wanted to curry favor with him. "You found Changyang Xiang Tian." Upon hearing that, Luo Jian's eyes brightened up. Noticing Luo Yun's pale face, Luo Jian's eyes trailed down Luo Yun's shirt to see the single footprint on his chest. With a haughty voice, Luo Jian said, "Seeing you in such a sorry state, it would appear that this Changyang Xiang Tian forced you to suffer quite a bit." Luo Yun's face grew angry as he spoke. "What the Lord says is correct. I just recently saw Changyang Xiang Tian and politely asked him to come visit my lord. But that Changyang Xiang Tian was completely outrageous and arrogant beyond belief. Not only that, but he is extremely violent, and most importantly, he did not care for you at all. He said that the Lord is." Luo Yun started to trail off from hesitation. Luo Jian scowled, "Don't just stand there and stutter. What did Changyang Xiang Tian say about me?" Luo Yun's eyes flashed with an indignant color as he hesitated for one last time. With a spurt of courage, he cried, "Changyang Xiang Tian said that the master wasn't worth a fart, and throwing a shoe at him would not be worth the effort." "What?" Luo Jian's face grew just as angry as his emotions. Although the Luo clan was not extremely influential within the Tian Yuan continent, within the Jessen kingdom, they were one of the most prestigious clans with a 200-year-old history. In the Jessen kingdom, the amount of clans that could beat them in power could be counted on one's hands. When it came to the successor of the Luo clan, it can be said that Luo Jian was a noble of extremely high standards that even the crowned prince and princess of the kingdom could be considered to be on the same footing as he was. He didn't think that within the Kargath Academy there would be an unknown freshman that would dare to be so egotistical. In his entire life, he had never seen someone so arrogant towards him. Luo Jian's stare grew cold towards Luo Yun. He really said this. The amount of anger was hardly being concealed by Luo Jian's tone. Seeing Luo Jian's reaction, Luo Yun was secretly delighted. However, he quickly regained himself and said, "Yes, my lord, what Luo Yun says is true. I wouldn't dare lie to you, this Changyang Xiang Tian is truly too arrogant. He never saw you as anyone worthwhile, and even dared to spout out arrogant words. If we do not teach him a lesson, then I fear that the Lord will lose face and be the target of ridicule within the academy." The more Luo Yun spoke, the angrier Luo Jian became. Standing to his feet, he growled, "Where is Changyang Xiang Tian? I want you to bring me to him, and if he truly doesn't see me as someone worthwhile, then I shall see how strong he is." "Yes, of course. Please follow me, my lord." Luo Yun exited the room and brought the angry Luo Jian out of the room with him towards the library. At the same time within one of the rooms in Kargath Academy, the respectful Karl brought another 20-year-old youth out and towards the library. As they passed through the sports field, a few seniors noted the group with looks of surprise. Their comments could be heard from all directions. Isn't that person walking over there Lord Cheng? He hasn't been seen around the academy for over a year already. What wind blew him here today? A senior around the same age as him said in surprise. I've heard that a year ago, Lord Cheng had already reached the middle levels of sainthood, so there's no telling how strong he is now. Lord Cheng is definitely the genius of Kargath Academy. He had condensed a saint weapon at the age of 19 and became a saint. At the age of 20, he then reached the middle levels of sainthood. 1 year has passed already, so the Lord Cheng must have reached the upper levels of sainthood with his talent in cultivation. Definitely, Lord Cheng is the #1 genius at cultivation at Kargath Academy. The headmaster had even said before that by the age of 23, Lord Cheng would definitely become a great saint. Becoming a great saint by the age of 23, Lord Cheng is truly amazing. Many of the seniors in Kargath Academy are still at the rank of the 10th layer of Saint Force. As Karl walked down the path slowly, the seniors that saw the pair walk by continued to gossip. Lord Cheng was a very well-known figure within Kargath Academy, not for his character, but for his cultivation rate that would astound anyone. Within the Tian Yuan continent, he could be considered to be a prodigy blessed by the heavens, and in Kargath Academy, he could be considered as standing at the peak of the strongest experts. At this moment, Jian Chen was still pouring his interest into the book in his hands, completely unaware of the incoming trouble. Chapter 28. Incoming Trouble, 2. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. In a flash, Luo Yun and Luo Jian arrived at the library gates. A few feet away from the big gates, the one who had been trailing Jian Chen, Chen Feng, was leaning against a tree trunk. His eyes were constantly watching Jian Chen, who was still reading with relish, and had completely forgotten about his surroundings. When Chen Feng saw Luo Yun with Luo Jian by his side, he immediately ran over to them. He bowed at Luo Jian, and with a charming face, said, "I didn't think that I would meet the Lord Luo Jian here. I am truly honored to see you." Chen Feng was extremely respectful, although he too belonged to a clan. Within the Jessen kingdom, it was a very minor one. It was only when he was joined together with the children of bigger clans that he dared to collect money from those weaker than him. With this, he had a strong relationship with the Luo clan that would definitely bring him many benefits. If he was lucky, then his own clan would be pulled up into the higher ranks with the help of Luo Jian. After all, Luo Jian was to be the clan's successor. Luo Jian felt proud as he looked at the respectful Chen Feng, and gave a small wave of his hand. "Don't say any more crap. Is Changyang Xiang Tian in the library?" Even though Luo Jian had absolutely no trace of politeness, Chen Feng's look of respect didn't waver in the least. With a smile, he replied, "He is, Changyang Xiang Tian is still in the library." A sneer gradually formed on Luo Jian's face, as he got the answer he wanted. "That's good. Go inside and call him out for me." The library had a rule that all fighting inside was prohibited, and even Luo Jian had to respect that rule, despite his family having a great amount of influence. "Yes, of course, Master Luo. I'll have Changyang Xiang Tian out immediately," Chen Feng said compliantly as he entered the library. Inside the library, Jian Chen's focus was still on his book. Whenever he was in the library his guard was at its lowest. This was because within the library, he didn't have to worry about others causing trouble or asking questions, so remaining on guard wasn't needed. While Jian Chen was lost in his own world, he had the sudden feeling of someone's hand clasping down on his shoulder. Although he was still reluctant to part from his book, he looked to the youth standing next to me with a cold sneer on his face. From his memory, he remembered that this person was one of the 4 people who had tried to extort protection money from him. Chen Feng stood by his side with a look of great joy at Jian Chen's impending doom. With a strange tone, he said, "Changyang Xiang Tian, I didn't think we'd see each other again so soon." "It's you." Jian Chen scowled. Without giving him face, he spoke, "If you're still looking for protection money, then you can scram." Chen Feng's eyes flashed with anger, but he didn't dare make a move towards Jian Chen. The library was strict on their rules, and he was sure that he wasn't a match for Jian Chen. Chen Feng stuck his chest out as his glared maliciously at Jian Chen, and coldly said, "Changyang Xiang Tian, although I am no match for you, Kargath Academy is not someplace you can rampage around. If you really have the guts, then follow me outside. Otherwise, prepare to stay in this library for the rest of your life." After dropping these words, Chen Feng directly walked out of the library. However, the words he had said had already attracted the attentions of all the students within the library. Immediately, many people began to shift their attentions to Jian Chen with complicated expressions of envy, respect, and jealousy. Jian Chen slowly closed the book with a crossed expression. From Chen Feng's words it would seem that he got reinforcements to help him. Jian Chen's eyes twinkled as he put the book back on the bookshelf and then walked towards the entrance of the library deep in thought. Although he knew people were waiting outside for him, if he didn't go out then people would think he was afraid of them. If Jian Chen wanted to continue reading books in the library in peace, then he would need to reveal his own strength and inspire fear into the others. Otherwise more and more people would come and find trouble with him, there would be no point in coming to the library in that case. Although he knew that the people outside were definitely not weak, it was possible that they were experts at the same level as Ka Diyun. However, Jian Chen still did not show any trace of fear. He was confident that if he faced a saint at his current level, even if he didn't win, he would not easily lose. After all, no matter if it were battle experience or techniques, Jian Chen far surpassed anyone else at the academy. Moreover, he was a person who had experienced countless life or death situations. As soon as Jian Chen left the library, he looked up to find 3 youths standing outside the door. They didn't look very different from each other, as they all wore the school uniform. 2 of the people were part of the extortion group Jian Chen had met before, and the third one was looking at Jian Chen with an expression full of arrogance. It was obvious that he had been a helper summoned by the other 2. Seeing Jian Chen actually walk out of the library, Luo Yun began to laugh evilly. He whispered to Luo Jian standing next to him, "My lord, he is Changyang Xiang Tian." Luo Jian's arrogant eyes sized up Jian Chen with an expression of disdain, and he coldly said, "Brat, are you Changyang Xiang Tian?" Jian Chen gave Luo Jian a level look. Luo Jian looked to be around 22.23 years old, and he had an extremely handsome appearance. However, his expression did not hide any of his arrogance. "And who are you?" Jian Chen indifferently replied to Luo Jian, his tone ice-cold. Luo Yun, who was standing next to Luo Jian, shouted, "How dare you, Changyang Xiang Tian? What kind of status do you have to dare to use that kind of tone to talk to my clan's lord? Do you want to get kicked out of this academy? Changyang Xiang Tian, hurry up and apologize to my lord. Otherwise, don't think you can stay at Kargath Academy for much long." Chen Feng did not miss the chance to suck up to Luo Jian, and yelled back at Jian Chen in an indignant tone. Hearing these 2's words, the Luo clan's lord, Luo Jian, became even haughtier, and his face was full of self-pride. Jian Chen's unchanged face gradually showed a hint of a sneer, and he looked at the 3 people with disdain, and said, "Based on your words, are you saying that the headmaster of Kargath Academy will listen to you 3? Or perhaps, are you saying that Kargath Academy belongs to your clan, whoever you want to leave must leave? The 3 of you are really too audacious, to even dare to look down on the headmaster." Hearing Jian Chen's words, the expression of both Luo Yun and Chen Feng suddenly paled. Even Luo Jia, who had a huge clan backing him up, he could not stop his expression from turning unsightly, as he glared poisonously at Jian Chen. Although he had the most influence backing him up out of the 3 since Luo Jian was the successor of Jessen Kingdom's powerful Luo clan, he did not dare to show any disrespect towards the headmaster of Kargath Academy. If Jian Chen's words spread to the headmaster's ears, then they would be heavily punished. In the worst-case scenario, they could be directly expelled. Even if Luo Jian had a powerful background, even if his father was Luo clan's clan leader, even if he was Luo clan's successor, there was no way he could get away of such a consequence completely cop-free. His Luo clan would definitely not be willing to offend Kargath Academy's headmaster for his sake. Luo Jian's face turned gloomy, and he glared at Jian Chen. Changyang Xiang Tian, you really are quite arrogant. I just wonder if you have the qualifications to be so arrogant. Jian Chen laughed in disdain, and coldly replied, stop wasting your breath, just say why you've come looking for me. Luo Jian let out a smile filled with a murderous intent. The reason I came is very simple. I just wanted to see how someone like you defeated a recently advanced saint, even if Ka Diyun didn't use a saint weapon. Changyang Xiang Tian, are you really that amazing? Luo Jian cracked the knuckles on both his hands before clenching them both. The loud snapping sound from his knuckles was clear to hear as a strong amount of energy started to emit from his body onto Jian Chen's own. At the same time, the people who were reading their books inside the library all closed their books. Everyone started to chatter excitedly as they watched the events that were happening with Jian Chen with pleasure. Regarding the qi that Luo Jian was emitting, Jian Chen was not affected at all and stood straight like a towering mountain. Luo Jian's strength was clear to Jian Chen and was not at all weaker to Ka Diyun, however, it was not strong enough for him to fear, instead, his fighting spirit rose. As soon as they saw the two opponents were about to start fighting, the people in front of the library began to retreat, afraid that they would be affected by any shockwaves. How could we miss such an interesting battle? Just before the two people were about to begin fighting, a voice suddenly rang out from the back, and a few youths wearing the school uniform walked out from behind. There were a total of 5 people that had just arrived. Among them, one of the people was another person from the extortion group that Jian Chen had encountered earlier. Jian Chen did not recognize the other 4, but anyone could tell with a single glance that they were from major clans. Their brows seemed to hold an aloof and remote expressions. However, what drew Jian Chen's attention was the youth standing in the center of the group of 5. It was obvious from his eyes that he was the core figure the other 4 revolved around. He didn't seem that old, based on his appearance, he was probably around 20 years old. Yeah. Everyone, look, isn't the person in the middle Master Cheng, who's been missing the past year? I didn't imagine that he would also come. That's right, it really is Master Cheng, our Kargath Academy's genius. It's said that a year ago, his power had already reached the middle saint levels. With his talent in cultivation, I had thought during the past year, Master Cheng had already broken through to the great saint level and graduated. I didn't think that he was actually still on the academy grounds. I wonder what Master Cheng's current power is, and whether or not he has reached great saint level yet. The 3 people next to Master Cheng seem to be powerful saints who have already condensed their saint weapons. To think that the elites that are normally rare to see would all appear here. Seeing the students standing there, all of the students started to shout in alarm, rapidly increasing the noise in the environment. Qingming Xiang, you've come at just the right time. If you were the slightest bit late, you would have missed this interesting show. Seeing the youth amongst the crowd, Luo Jian immediately stopped his imposing manner, and laughed as he greeted the youth. He then nodded at the other 3 students following behind. Chapter 29. Another encounter with Tai Ta. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Qingming Xiang started to smile, how could I miss a match like this? He stared down at Jian Chen with disdain before saying, do you think that's Changyang Xiang Tian? Correct, Lord Cheng. He's definitely that Changyang Xiang Tian who hurt our companions. Luo Jian said as he stood behind Carl. Qingming Xiang nodded his head and said slowly, Changyang Xiang Tian, you're definitely not bad, to even hurt my comrades. His voice was getting darker with each word. Jian Chen's mind already understood that these were a group of unreasonable children with rich parents, so arguing with them was of no use, they would only listen to force. Thus, Jian Chen didn't bother to say any trash talk, instead, he said coldly, so what if we fight, if you're not happy with this, make the first move instead of spouting so much bullsh*. Hearing Jian Chen's words, Qing Mingxiang's face gradually turned ashen. Good. Good, good. Then it's time to see how strong you really are. With that, his body started to glow so brightly that the light extended 10 meters away to where Jian Chen was. Dashing forward, he launched his fist towards Jian Chen's nose. Against a person who wasn't even a saint, he wouldn't even bother using his saint weapon. Even Jian Chen knew that Qing Mingxiang's strength far surpassed Ka Diyun. The difference in saint force was far too great with his own as well. Therefore, Jian Chen absolutely could not afford to take that fist. Just when Qing Mingxiang's fist was about to connect with Jian Chen's head, his head suddenly blurred and dodged the fist. At the same time, Jian Chen's two fists went up to grab at the incoming arm from Qing Mingxiang. Assuming a horse stance, he stiffened his back and pulled at the arm with both of his own. Originally, when Qing Mingxiang was attacking, his center of gravity had been leaning forwards. Now, Jian Chen had pulled him further. He momentarily lost control over his body, and he began to fall forwards. However, Qing Mingxiang was quick to respond. Stamping on the ground with his foot, he exerted all his force to try to prevent any further pull from Jian Chen. As he did that, however, Jian Chen suddenly let go of Qing Mingxiang's arm and immediately pummeled at his stomach with a barrage of blows that were as fast as lightning. Since Qing Mingxiang's center of gravity was now focused towards the back, when Jian Chen had punched him with all his might, his legs couldn't help but stumbled backwards, as if he was struggling to avoid falling. After falling back 10 steps, Qing Mingxiang finally regained his bearings, but his face had long since turned into the same color as a pig's liver. With a dark and ominous expression, he glared at Jian Chen maliciously. Because of his majestic body, he was considered to have one of the strongest in the academy, so how could he not feel furious at this? If the academy found out his body was actually hit and injured like this, then he would no longer have face within the academy and become a laughing stock. After thinking about the consequences of this, he glared at Jian Chen with a stare that could kill, since this was an utter disgrace to him. Already, the entire audience had become absolutely quiet. Luo Jian's own face had become sluggish as he stared at Jian Chen with a surprised look. This was far beyond his wildest imagination, and not just his own, but everyone else watching. Qing Mingxiang was a talented genius when it came to cultivation, and even saints couldn't match him in a hand-to-hand fight. To have Jian Chen make him suffer such a loss and put him in such an ugly state was very surprising. Glaring once more at Jian Chen, Qing Mingxiang's arm started to release a silver type of qi before forming a two-handed sword. He snarled, saying, "Changyang Xiang Tian, I will definitely cripple you today." With that declaration, he surged towards Jian Chen with the silver sword in tow. "Stop!" Right as Qing Mingxiang had started to move, another deep voice had shouted over the crowd and noise. Immediately, everyone saw a rather robust and suntanned youth slowly walk forward. When Jian Chen saw the sturdy youth come forward, his eyes widened in shock. It was because this person was also a participant in the freshman competition and the person with the heavenly blessed strength, Tai Ta. The moment when Luo Jian and Qing Mingxiang's men looked at Tai Ta, their faces started to change, an abject fear taking hold of them. Luo Yun didn't recognize Tai Ta at all, so with an arrogant cry towards Tai Ta, he demanded, "Who are you?" "This is business concerning Lord Luo and Lord Qing, so don't interfere, otherwise you'll regret it." "Shut your mouth." Not even waiting for Luo Yun to finish talking, Luo Jian cut into Luo Yun's speech. Not even paying attention to Luo Yun's look of surprise, Luo Jian's face contained a smile towards Tai Ta as he cupped his hands in salute. So it was Brother Tai Ta after all. This one wonders what Brother Tai Ta is doing here. Tai Ta looked at him with an strange look before speaking in a low voice, "Who are you? I don't recognize you at all." Not understanding why Luo Jian's face became so unsightly, Tai Ta directly walked towards Jian Chen and lifted his hand to clasp onto Jian Chen's shoulder. "Changyang Xiang Tian, I didn't think I'd meet you here of all places." It has been so many days since I last saw you. He boomed. Jian Chen also gave a faint laugh. Tai Ta, let us put off this chat for now and let me take care of a few troublesome matters first. Listening to what Jian Chen said, Tai Ta's head whipped over to Qing Mingxiang and Luo Jian's group and slowly stared at them before pointing a finger. Changyang Xiang Tian, could it be that they're trying to bully you? It could be said that way, yes, Jian Chen indifferently said as he crossed his arms in front of his chest. As soon as he heard this, Tai Ta immediately rolled up his sleeves. He fiercely looked at the opposing group of people and loudly declared, Changyang Xiang Tian is my brother. Anyone who bullies him is bullying me as well. Whoever wants fight, come out. Even though my power might not be that strong, I, Tai Ta, am not afraid of you guys. Hearing Tai Ta's words, Jian Chen hesitated for a second. He looked at Tai Ta in confusion, not quite understand when he had become Tai Ta's brother. Qing Mingxiang and Luo Jian's expressions changed. They glanced at each other with a serious look. It was obvious that they were somewhat afraid of Tai Ta. Even though Tai Ta's actual power wasn't very strong, and they could easily defeat him in a fight, Tai Ta had a formidable supporter that even the two of them were afraid to encounter. This was why they had never dared to touch Tai Ta at Kargath Academy. Neither of the people spoke, and Karl and Luo Yun had already realized from Luo Jian's attitude that Tai Ta's identity was not normal. Thus, they made the smart decision of not making a sound. At that moment, the atmosphere had become slightly strange. After quietly pondering for a while, Luo Jian was the first to break the silence. Brother Tai Ta, this is a problem between me and Changyang Xiang Tian, I hope you don't meddle with our affairs. Luo Jian's tone was extremely polite. He clearly understood that although Tai Ta was a commoner, his current status was without a doubt not any less powerful than his. It was even higher than his by a bit. Even if he was the successor to the Luo clan, his status was at most equivalent to Tai Ta's. Luo Jian's words made all the spectators shocked. There were quite a few seniors amongst them that recognized both Luo Jian and Qing Mingxiang, and they knew that although their individual statuses weren't that high, they both had great clans backing them up. And yet, at the moment, the two of them had suddenly acted polite to Tai Ta. This made the library's spectators curious about Tai Ta's identity. They couldn't imagine what kind of background Tai Ta must have to have been so domineering, and to make the insufferably arrogant Luo Jian and Qing Mingxiang so cautious and fearful. Unfortunately, Tai Ta had no intention to appreciate the offer. Without giving face, he said, I already said earlier, Changyang Xiang Tian is my brother. His problems are my problems. If anyone has complaints, then everyone should direct them towards me. Luo Jian's expression changed colors, and his eyes showed a serious expression. In regards to Tai Ta, he really didn't dare to offend him too much. At that moment, Qing Mingxiang snorted, and he glared at Tai Ta. In a heavy voice, he said, Tai Ta, do you really want to butt into this business? Having suffered from Jian Chen's hands, Qing Mingxiang had already formed a hatred for Jian Chen in his heart. For a freshman that hadn't even reached saint level yet to have put him in such a difficult situation was definitely a humiliation to his genius. If he didn't clean this situation up now, then he wouldn't be able to enjoy his time at the academy in the future. That's right, I want to get involved. Tai Ta yelled back, his expression harsh. Even though he clearly knew how powerful Qing Mingxiang was, Tai Ta still did not show any sign of fear. Jian Chen pulled at Tai Ta and said, Tai Ta, this is something between me and him. You shouldn't come, otherwise, you'll just get caught up in more trouble. Tai Ta's eyes flashed with anger, and he suddenly turned towards Jian Chen, frowning, Changyang Xiang Tian, what kind of words are those? Do you think that I, Tai Ta, is someone who would be scared of these things? Do you not think of me as your friend? Hearing this, Jian Chen could not help but feel puzzled. When had he and Tai Ta gotten so close? They barely even met each other. The only time they had really interacted was during the freshman martial arts competition. Humph, Tai Ta. Since you want to suffer so badly, then don't blame me. Don't think that just because you're the headmaster's apprentice, I won't dare to attack you. Let me witness exactly how great the headmaster's apprentice's abilities are. Hearing Qing Mingyan's words, Jian Chen was internally shocked. He hadn't imagined that Tai Ta had actually become the headmaster's apprentice. If this news was spread throughout the academy, it would spur a great craze. At this moment, Qing Mingyang had already appeared in front of Tai Ta, and directly struck his fist against Tai Ta's chest. Because Tai Ta had a special status, Qing Mingxiang did not dare to actually hurt Tai Ta, and his fist only used fifth layer force. In his opinion, even if he only used the strength of the fifth layer, it still wasn't an attack that a saint could receive, let alone someone below that, like Tai Ta. Faced with Qing Mingxiang's attack, Tai Ta did not dare to be careless, and his face showed matchless concentration. He roared, then with his right arm seemingly as sturdy as steel, he fearlessly threw a fist at Qing Mingxiang to meet force with force. Chapter 30. Vice Headmaster Bai N. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ping. Tai Ta and Qing Mingxiang's fists collided into each other, creating a loud boom. A fierce shockwave exploded as the two fighters flew backwards. Feeling Tai Ta's power within his fist, Qing Mingxiang's face faltered slightly, becoming a look of astonishment. Although Tai Ta's strength wasn't at the level of a saint, the energy in Tai Ta's fist was something that even a saint couldn't release. If it weren't for the fact that Qing Mingxiang's strength was stronger than Tai Ta by so much, then he would have suffered a huge loss from that confrontation. But even though he had made it out relatively unharmed, Qing Mingxiang's shoulder had started to ache with pain. Stretching his right shoulder a bit, Qing Mingxiang looked at Tai Ta in a new light. The headmaster's apprentice is truly marvelous. The power inside your fist is likewise frightening, and completely dominated my own fist. If you were a saint, then your fist would have forced me into taking a huge amount of damage. Tai Ta's godly strength was an inconceivable amount of power that no one else could compare themselves to. His strength was so strong that even Jian Chen gasped in astonishment. Against such a strong opponent, Tai Ta didn't suffer a single trace of damage. Tai Ta boomed with a happy laughter, and said, "Try again, I'll return the favor immediately." He swung his fists in a ready position as he faced Qing Mingxiang. Looking at Tai Ta, Qing Mingxiang's eyebrows knitted together as he looked the paling Luo Jian. "I'll stall Tai Ta, you go teach Changyang Xiang Tian a lesson." Without a pause, he charged at Tai Ta and the two started to fight once more. Thanks to Tai Ta's special status within the academy, Qing Mingxiang didn't dare to use his saint weapon, and instead used his twin fists to fight him. But after a few rounds of close combat exchanges, Qing Mingxiang began to grumble to himself about how absurd Tai Ta's strength was. Not only that, but Tai Ta's body was like steel, so combined with his enormous strength that complemented his saint force, there was no way Qing Mingxiang would be able to defeat Tai Ta without using his saint weapon, despite being stronger than Tai Ta. He was using the entirety of his strength, but could only accomplish very little, such as pushing Tai Ta backwards. In addition, he still didn't dare to fight head-on with Tai Ta for an extended period of time. The students all watched Qing Mingxiang fight against the incredibly strong Tai Ta with wide eyes, as they took pleasure in watching the fight. Although many of the students here had never seen Tai Ta before, they all knew him by name. After all, he was the second-place winner of the freshman competition, and thus his name had spread throughout the academy. Still, many people were having a hard time believing that someone who wasn't even a saint yet could fight toe-to-toe with Kargath Academy's talented genius, Qing Mingxiang. The news that the freshman ruler of the freshman competition, Changyang Xiang Tian, was able to beat the Saint Ka Diyan had already shaken the academy. And at the moment, they were completely incapable of accepting the fact that Tai Ta, who wasn't even a saint yet, could fight one of the strongest saints, Qing Mingxiang, to a standstill. While Qing Mingxiang fought fiercely against Tai Ta, Luo Jian didn't idle about. Rushing towards Jian Chen, Luo Jian didn't bother to use his saint weapon since he was a middle-rank saint, so it would be a waste for him to use it against someone who wasn't even a saint yet. Luo Jian quickly ran towards Jian Chen before he could even prepare himself, and used his right leg to kick him. The kick traveled at such a fast speed towards Jian Chen's stomach, that he could feel a cold gale. The kick was both fast and so fierce, and had no hesitation at all. Since it was Jian Chen, Luo Jian would never consider holding back. Despite Luo Jian's kick being extraordinarily fast, he underestimated Jian Chen's reaction and evasion speed. Just as Luo Jian was about to kick Jian Chen, he narrowly dodged to the side, and so Luo Jian's leg only clipped his clothes. Although it had looked like Jian Chen had only barely dodged the kick by the skin of his teeth, there was not a single trace of panic on Jian Chen's face. Instead, there was only a casual look of relaxation. Seeing his attack miss, Luo Jian's eyes reflected a shocked expression. However, the next instant, the Cyan Saint force immediately appeared from within his body. As soon as it materialized, mysterious breezes began to surround his body. Suddenly feeling the fierce gale from Luo Jian's kick, Jian Chen's eyes revealed a look of amazement. According to the books he had read earlier, this type of attack was an example of a saint with a wind attribute. A saint with an attribute was generally stronger than a saint without one by a large margin. Not only that, but those with an attribute would generally have that added to their strength. Those with a wind attribute would definitely have their speed increased multiple times, and in the higher ranks, there would be very little that could compete with a wind attribute saint in speed. A cyan-colored saint force started to flow out from Luo Jian as his right hand was completely wrapped up in it. With another quick dash towards Jian Chen to attack him, this fist was even faster than before and even left behind a phantom image. The naked eye would not be able to see the fist at all. His face growing grave, Jian Chen leaned his head to the side and dodged Luo Jian's fist once more. His right leg immediately lashed out towards Luo Jian that was no slower than the fist earlier. Luo Jian's eyes flashed dangerously as he realized Jian Chen's speed was no slower than his own. Because of the high-speed kick, Luo Jian had no time to dodge it. Without any other choice, the wind-attributed saint force started to concentrate within his left hand as he brought it smashing down onto Jian Chen's incoming leg. Luo Jian wind-attributed saint force-infused fist fiercely collided with Jian Chen's leg, causing the weaker Jian Chen to be sent flying back. Jian Chen's body was thrown back with great speed, but both of his legs dragged against the ground, using the friction to slow his momentum. Leaving behind two exceptionally clear drag marks on the ground, Jian Chen estimated that he had been forced to retreat 10 meters back. Luo Jian cracked his knuckles and stared at the rarely seen look of solemnity on Jian Chen's face. In that short confrontation, Luo Jian realized that he could not view Jian Chen as a regular person. Although his strength wasn't that of a saint, his fighting capabilities were. Luo Jian's eyes started to flash with a small amount of hesitation before he finally came to a conclusion. In this situation, if he wanted to defeat Jian Chen as soon as possible, then he would have to use his saint weapon. Although this would be hard to avoid being subjected to everyone's laughter, but he knew that if he didn't use his saint weapon he would not be able to defeat Jian Chen in a short amount of time. If it took a long time for someone like him to deal with a freshman that wasn't a saint, then it would create an even bigger impact on his reputation. When he thought about how he, as a middle saint level, was unable to defeat a person who had not yet reached saint level, and even had to use a saint weapon to do so, Luo Jian could not help but feel vexed. It made his hatred for Jian Chen develop even deeper. Today's battle, no matter who the victor was, he would still lose a lot of face. On the other hand, Jian Chen would most likely have his reputation increased by today's battle, and his reputation would once again spread throughout the entire Kargath Academy. Luo Jian's eyes shone with a cold light that could make one shudder, and nobody dared to look at him straight in the eyes. Accompanying his palm, a powerful cyan saint force began to frantically rush forth, gradually condensing into a cyan greatsword. It was about 5 feet long and 3 inches wide, and the entire sword was covered in a thick layer of cyan light. That sharp blade emitted blinding light rays from the reflection of the sunlight, and the mere sight of it made people quake in fear. Jian Chen sensed that the cyan greatsword in Luo Jian's hand was emitting a powerful saint force, and his face gradually became more grave. Using a saint weapon, Luo Jian's power had multiplied, much higher than it previously was. If Luo Jian didn't use his saint weapon, then Jian Chen could still deal with the fight, albeit with some difficulty. However, once the saint weapon was drawn, Jian Chen could only cautiously take up the challenge. Based on his previous world's experience from the countless life or death battles he had gained, perhaps he would be able to hold off the attack. However, it would be extremely difficult to win. With his saint weapon in hand, Luo Jian's imposing manner suddenly grew stronger. His eyes intensely glared at Jian Chen, as he said, "Chanyang Xiang Tian, today I will definitely dispose of you." Luo Jian raised the cyan greatsword high in the air, and its cyan glow sharply increased in brightness, as its strong saint force managed to jolt even the few students observing the fight from within the library. "Ah!" Luo Jian roared, as he quickly slashed the cyan greatsword down from above his head, leaving a gorgeous cyan trajectory behind it as it moved. The only thing that could be seen was the lightly fast cyan sword chi that shot out and headed straight towards Jian Chen. Sensing that the sword chi was extremely powerful, Jian Chen's face immediately showed matchless concentration. That was definitely not something the current him could withstand. The cyan sword chi was so incomprehensibly fast that Jian Chen didn't have the time to contemplate his actions. He gathered all his power into his legs, to prepare to dodge with all his might. Suddenly, a white figure shot out as fast as lightning at a pace even faster than the cyan sword chi, and stood in front of Jian Chen as a shield. When the cyan sword chi shot towards the white figure, it unexpectedly disappeared silently without a trace. Not even a single spark could be seen. The white figure that approached was a middle-aged man around 40 years old. The man wore a white chongpao, and his scholarly face was extremely solemn. His pair of unordinary eyes were completely filled with anger. When Luo Jian saw the white-clad middle-aged man, his expression drastically changed, and his face paled. He made the cyan greatsword in his hand disappear in an instant, and immediately bowed to greet the man respectfully, "Vice Headmaster." These mere 2 words betrayed the traces of fear hidden in Luo Jian's voice. Hearing Luo Jian address this middle-aged male like so, Jian Chen paused. His gaze rested on the male's back for a bit, as his heart realized the man's identity. To his relief, it was the one who held the position second only the headmaster's. Kargath Academy's one and only vice headmaster, Bai En.